So the Switch 2 Direct finally released, and god damn was it such a change of pace. We love games and anime, but sometimes it's an incredibly stifling world to be in. The landscape moves so quickly, and if you try to keep up, you never truly get to enjoy anything. If you want to engage with the media on a deep level, you can't keep up with trends, so we, stopped. We haven't had the money or time to keep up with the last million best game, anime, movie, TV show ever. And as a result, video game showcases have started to feel a little monotonous. Game after clone after game of the same three genres of game. But to my surprise, the Switch 2 Direct and the Nintendo Direct before didn't feel like that. I felt myself getting excited. In fact, Nintendo as a whole feels like a breath of fresh air in the games industry. So let's go into it a little more than just a reaction stream. As a duo, we've both been more than a little disenfranchised with the gaming industry, watching our friends spend years getting into the games industry only to be laid off to a disappointing carousel of unoriginal streamer slop games. We have somewhat opted out of the general gaming zeitgeist. The fact we're impoverished YouTubers also means that we couldn't even if we wanted to.
We also like to try to spin things to be more positive. And while poverty doesn't actually build character, it can force you to play your backlog of games and not buy a dozen new games every Steam sale. Would someone employed play 1,000 hours of Slay the Spire? I think not. But hey, I was raised to be a Nintendo girly, so we watched the Direct. The variety of games on display and the endearing style of Nintendo just felt nice. We watched the State of Play whenever that was, and I can't recall a single game from it. It was just trailer after trailer of generic hyper-realistic shooters.
It feels like Nintendo's mission statement is always to let the players have fun. And obviously it's a company that wants to make money, but it wants to do that and provide a service that players want to use, not one they feel forced to use. Nothing exemplifies this more than the Switch adding a feature that allows you to trade digital games with your family. So now, if we both want to play a game that we've bought digitally, we don't have to get two copies. Much like the It Takes Two developer Hazelight Studios that allows you to play co-op with only one copy of the game. Maximizing profits isn't the aim. Having a good game is. There are downsides to the system, and it has its limitations. For instance, it's solely within the Nintendo Online families and has a 2-week upper limit. But as our friends have already worked out, you can just make a family group to make having Nintendo Online cheaper. Overall, it seems like an interesting way to encourage lending while also still allowing a digital marketplace. There was a similar system on the DS, but it wasn't for all games and only worked over a local connection. Overall, this system feels like something rooted in Nintendo's family console philosophy. There is very much an undercurrent of responding to general consumer complaints though, with a more robust kickstand, charging port you can access in tabletop mode, and way more internal storage, to name a few. The fact that on launch, the Switch 2 is launching with a fully functional pseudo GameCube controller is a great example. I'm so excited to play GameCube games with a GameCube controller again. While it's paywalled by the Nintendo Online membership, having all these ports from previous games is actually insane. A lot of GameCube games are highly inaccessible if you want to do it legitimately, and this is at least bringing some of them to you. Not to suck Nintendo's dick too much, but it really is affordable comparatively. While Microsoft and Sony are focusing on game passes that incentivize you to play a game as quickly as you can in case it gets removed from their service, Nintendo is content to sell you its games and let you play them at your leisure. Not to say Nintendo is free from faults, they have many, but it feels like they want to foster an experience outside of the blazing inferno that is the rest of the industry. As we tend to do, we wanted to analyze the way this had us so much more hyped than other game showcases. Part of it was definitely personal taste. We both just tend to play more games on our Switch and prefer the sort of games Nintendo makes. But it was also the delivery of the information. Fun graphics, constant presence of the developers, and a barrage of interesting information made it a constantly intriguing showcase. On release day, there are only going to be a few titles available. 22 of them. But yes, most of them are re-releases. Taking out those, that leaves you with Mario Kart World, Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour, and Survival Kids. The original Switch had 11. Despite this, it felt like there would be a lot to play. Improvements on old games or graphical increases, as well as an assortment of games that would be coming in the following months. The emphasis on technical improvements also helped make it feel like a worthwhile upgrade. Not necessarily one we'll be buying immediately. I got my Switch 2 years after release. But hey, maybe when we get a YouTube payout, we'll be able to buy a sixth of a Switch 2. Speaking of price, that's one piece of information that was conveniently left out of the showcase. Personally, I was fine with that at the time. We guessed around £350 and found out later it'll be just shy of £400. That's about 55% of a launch day PS5 Pro. The Switch 2 could be a Gen 9 or a Gen 10, but arguably it's the first Gen 10 console, so we'll have to see how other companies price their new releases, but as the Switch errs more towards a true hybrid console and not just a handheld you can plug into a TV, this price seems acceptable enough. What is less acceptable is the increase in games price, but I can't help but feel like people have forgotten that this happens with every new console. When I was a kid, I was buying DS games for $19.99. As a teen, Wii and 3DS games were $39.99, and as an adult, Switch games are $49.99. Also, as an adult, Switch 2 prices will be around £75 on the upper end. While I would like them to not put the prices up constantly, this isn't abnormal despite how people online are reacting. What intrigues me more is that they are finally doing something people have complained about for ages, making digital games a cheaper price than physical. Which sucks for me, because I love buying physical games, but I get the appeal.
The difference is seemingly about £8, and I'm curious how this will be taken. I can see that it may be deemed as a soft play at pushing people to purely digital, but equally, I wonder how many will be okay with a little extra to physically own a game. The digital cartridge system seems an even better idea for families. The game is cheaper, and your children can take turns playing without accidentally eating the cartridges, or like, whatever children do. One thing I haven't seen people complain about is the new larger size, so I would like to complain about it. Sure, it's great for all you normal size freaks, but the Switch was one of the few consoles that fit in my tiny baby hands, and I think that Nintendo is just bowing down to big hand.
Ultimately, the reason it felt so different was that it just felt like a different approach to gaming, and had us thinking on how general gaming communities suck big balls at the moment. Sweeping generalization, obviously, but this hype and hate cycle is exhausting to keep up with. We opted out ages ago. I don't think I've bought a game day one for actual years, let alone just because everyone else was playing it. Both of us are hipsters in the pretentious dickhead way, but equally we just don't jump on trends that quick. It's kinda sad to see people treating games as so disposable, especially when your average gamer is emulating the streamer approach of what to play. Allow me a small tangent for a moment. I love indie games, partly because they tend to be the only type of games we afford ourselves, but also because I love supporting smaller developers. Devs work for years on their projects and bear the full weight of their creative expression, in the same way we do while making YouTube videos, but instead of a month or two, the project spans years. One of the best ways for indie games to advertise is through social media and other creators, and that all worked well until the introduction of the streamer game. You see, a lot of full-time streamers have contracts with the platform they stream on. Some of them require the streamer to be live upwards of 8 hours a day. This is a problem. What do you do for 8 hours every single day? You have to be entertaining, it's not so simple. Well, there's an ever-changing Twitch meta. For a period, these streamers watched TV shows, anime, even YouTube videos. What could they do that required minimal brain power with maximum viewer attention? Then came the streamer game. Now this is only my perspective, so take it with a grain of salt, but the first I can remember was Goat Simulator. It was popular for its silly, easy gameplay for a while, and a few clones were quickly pumped out. This is the cycle I have an issue with. An interesting indie game is released, and picked up by Twitch streamers and gaming YouTubers. Then the clones start being made. Low-effort attempts to cash in on a trend. Sometimes they're well made, but mostly they're not. I just wanted to interject here to say games are incredibly hard to make. We both studied video games at uni, and yeah, they are ridiculously hard, so any game that actually gets finished is a massive achievement. And also, yes, there's deconstructions and parodies, and you can use other people's ideas to create your own, but I don't think that's what this is. In 2021, Townscaper released, a really interesting game by Oscar Stalberg. I followed him on Twitter at the time and watched him test his systems to create a small but unique experience. It sold pretty well and started a trend. In the years since, so many games have released with the exact same premise. Summer House, Tiny Glade, Gauntlet's. The games are all pretty and clearly have passion and skill put into them, but they tend to arrive a little after the hype and can suffer from trying to stick to a trend that has already passed. Another, much worse example is Lethal Company, a fun horror game where you and your friends rush through scary locations to bring items back to your ship. And then you have Headliners, a horror game about taking a helicopter to a scary location to take photos and bring them back to your base. Then there's Nuclear Nightmare, a horror game where you and your friends collect something. Backrooms Escape Together, a horror game where you and your friends explore spooky environments. Escape the Backrooms, Murky Divers, Dark Hours, Content Warning, Repo. It's just exhausting. These games rarely innovate or change. They do what works and content creators eat it up. There's a focus on quick-to-learn systems with an implied depth, lore-baiting a narrative, and often some level of rage-baiting to create challenges that can only be overcome by someone who has 8 hours a day to master a very specific mechanic. The current trend seems to be multiplayer experiences to create emergent narratives over the course of a stream. Repo deviates the most from the format, so that's nice, but the point I'm trying to make is that there's so many amazing games by so many talented people, and the ones that rise to the surface are the same things that have always done so. And it works! The biggest streamers get easy games to play, and the developers get paid. Win-win, right? Well no, not for anyone trying something new or interesting. Obviously it's not the indie devs' fault for wanting to cash in on the hype and keep their head above water. I've also watched at least a dozen Repo and Cabin Inspector videos because they tickle my brain in a certain way, but it's very much the fast fashion of video games. Nor is it really the streamer's fault for being pulled into predatory contracts that have them working more than full-time performers who need to maintain engagement for a full shift. And it isn't the fault of the viewers who want something easy to put on in the background while they write YouTube scripts or do housework. But it would be nice if more people were willing to step out of the hype cycle and come vibe with what makes them happy instead.
Money makes life happy.
Oh yeah, we went to the Switch 2 experience in London and could actually check some of this out for ourselves. First up, the actual event was an experience. We turned up way too early and hung around the doors awkwardly, but this does mean we were in the first batch to enjoy all that it had to offer for the day. After some queuing, the doors opened to 50 plus staff members cheering as we walked in, and that was our first warning sign for what was to come. As expected, the first game we got sent to was Mario Kart World. Filming was super awkward, and we were informed all footage had to have a person in it, so we didn't pass it off as faulty because the games are still demos or something? Even though some of the games weren't demos, but I guess they were running on the Switch 2 for the first time, or at least the first time the public had seen it. This made filming a massive pain because we didn't want to be in the recordings, and each member of staff kind of had their own idea for what a person in shot counted as, but we did our best. Most of the games were limited in some way. For instance, Mario Kart didn't let you off the tracks for the open world parts, Donkey Kong Bonanza wouldn't let you access the sub-levels, and most other games had a time limit baked into the demo. It was also at least one staff member per console, which got a little intense, and added some fun RNG with the games. One person might be super nice and excited, and another might assume because you're a woman you want to play the cute minigames and not the RPG, to pick some totally vague, totally random examples. Actually touching the console added a lot to our opinions that I think either of us expected. It just feels like an upgrade of the Switch, which is all I wanted from a new console. The main new gimmick is the mouse control, and it's not a bad gimmick. It's super responsive and easy to use. Metroid Prime 4 was especially impressive. Swapping from normal aiming to mouse aiming was instant. It certainly opens up the Switch 2 to more genres of game. However, I did find my hand was getting a little sore pretty quickly. Maybe it gets easier as you adapt to it over time, but having a mouse definitely opens up new possibilities. Games like Civilization Revolution are fun and all, but it's a very different experience from playing Civ 6 on the PC. Just having more ways to play games is a benefit too, and the Joy-Con works on small surfaces like sofa arms and your own leg, which we did test and is how we use the actual mouse for our TV, so honestly it's not so hard to adapt to.
In general, it feels higher quality with more metal and matte plastic and less shiny plastic. The thumbsticks have a little more resistance, and the bigger size still feels comfortable even for my tiny baby hands. The screen is much clearer and sharper, not just because of the larger size. Games looked better and were very obviously running on more powerful hardware. The welcome tour was actually helpful here because I learnt that that strange U-shaped stand was to free up internal space compared to the OLED Switch 1. This was used to cram in more processing power and an aerial. It is a shame the colours are more subdued, with just a little splash on the dust covers for the thumbsticks and on top of each Joy-Con. But they're swappable, so hopefully they release some more fun ones. Or, you know, get some custom ones online a few months down the line. Or you could order these sweet Merry Kiwi branded stickers and put them on stuff, like this Game Boy, to remind your Switch One of its heritage. Or this lizard, to remind you of your heritage. But anyway, since most games were in docked mode, it was hard to tell how it feels long term, but we did get to experience Pro Controllers, Joy-Cons, and the GameCube controller. Was it everything you wished for?
Yes, it was. The nostalgia was immediate the second my fingers brushed over those asymmetric buttons and oddly rigged C-stick. The iconic purple colour seared into my happiest childhood memories. If you couldn't tell, I'm a big GameCube fan.
But to be honest, even after all of this, I just don't see myself buying one on the release day, or maybe even this year. Even if it were cheaper, it's just not the big purchase I want to prioritize at the moment. But the experience was effective at pushing me towards wanting one, really at all. The time between watching the direct and writing the script did mellow the hype I felt, but I still feel excited about this console more than any others in recent memory. As someone who doesn't care much for super high quality graphics, Nintendo has always been my go-to alongside a PC or laptop, but getting to see Cyberpunk 2077 and Yakuza 0 running smoothly with no visual difference on a handheld console is pretty cool and impressive as hell that it fits in a device a little smaller than a Steam Deck and massively smaller than a PS4. I don't need immense processing power and 120 frames per second. To be honest, I just straight up can't tell frame rates apart, as playing the Welcome Tour frame rate quiz proved. Nor do I play games that require it, such as online shooters. So for me, frame rate was decent enough on the Switch One, but I am excited to see how game studios use this new computing power. Having now played the Nintendo Welcome Tour, I do want to pay money for it. It's adorable and a little nerdy. There's a playfulness that permeates it. It doesn't feel like it's trying to sell me on the console, just excitedly showing off what it can do and the effort put in. It's an additive experience a lot of people won't want to have, and I don't think making it free to appeal to those people makes any sense. The little minigames are a fun way to interact with the features in a very direct way. Can you feel the rumble of the controller? See the difference in the frame rate? Do you remember the information you just read for this quiz? 775 aluminium used in aircrafts. Of course the price could influence my opinion, but just because I think a game should be free doesn't mean I should get it for free from the company. And maybe if the price is too high for you, just don't buy it and make a point to Nintendo. It was very noticeable how a lot of the games at the experience weren't entirely new. However, I don't know why people are acting like Nintendo is holding you at gunpoint to repurchase Tears of the Kingdom or any other game. You still have whatever you were playing it on before, so just stick with that if none of this appeals to you.
To tie it back into streamer games and the culture that surrounds it, why are you approaching games like a professional YouTuber whose livelihood depends on keeping relevancy? You're just some guy. Who are you performing the excessive spending for? If you have an interest in tech and gaming, that's one thing, but the average person does not need to act like an obsessive if they aren't obsessed. And if they are, you do you. You don't have to buy into hype cycles and should try to develop a sense of personal taste. Not only will this help you make better financial decisions, but you'll also have a healthier attitude to things that are not made with you in mind. But onto the event itself. As we mentioned, the massive amount of staff made it a little bit hit and miss. While playing that initial Mario Kart, people started getting bored with the short demo or wanted to move on. However, we were not allowed to enter the next zone until exactly 20 past 10. Like fine, okay, it's to keep things fair and let the staff be prepared for the waves of people, but we had to watch this poor member of staff be berated in front of us, just because she didn't immediately turn people around and send them back the way they came. Pretty much no situation should have you loudly disciplining another member of staff, let alone in front of a bunch of strangers. It was a bad look, and this woman was trying so hard to be nice and helpful with taking photos of people and giving out information that it came across really poorly. Another issue was that you were not allowed to bring drinks inside. Apparently this was in the small print online, but it seems ridiculous to confiscate drinks. This event was 2 to 4 hours long, which is way too long to go without drinking anything. It wasn't until we went to leave the event that we saw one singular water cooler, and were immediately informed that we mustn't dare take the water anywhere near the technology or else. Like, I get it, you don't want the mess and potential spills, but you couldn't leave the event and come back in, so it came across very strange, overly cautious, and frustrating. We also had 2 monster cans confiscated. Like, geez, we wouldn't have drunk them near the staff if you'd asked. Do you know how expensive Monster is in this economy? Sure, it's a bit whiny, but in general the event felt too geared towards people unfamiliar with games. From overly explainy staff to constant condescension, it felt like they hadn't been briefed on how to interact with a variety of people. Having such a tightly controlled environment was somewhat a detriment to the fun, with multiple instances of us being redirected to do the proper thing instead of having fun with these games. Of course, some of the staff members were good at adapting and jumping in when needed, but a lot of them weren't, and I won't blame any one individual, because I only interacted with these people for a few minutes. Maybe they were tired, or had been told off the day before and didn't want to make the same mistake. But in general, there was an underlying current of rigidity. Play the games as we want so you have the most fun TM. Only film in a way that won't allow you to portray the games as faulty or bad. Obviously, this is no one's day job. I've worked similar events and you barely get any information or training, or expected to work long hours on your feet and get paid next to nothing, if anything at all. The fault lies with whatever company was put in charge of this and the decisions they made. Big events are hard to run and manage, but it definitely felt odd. A lot of other people online had super good experiences, which is great for them. Maybe we were just unlucky, maybe we're both super sensitive to backseat gaming. Also, it was free, so like, can't complain too much. And we did have fun experiencing the Switch too, but equally I don't want to lie and say it was super easy and perfect either. We left pretty exhausted with no cans of Monster to revive us. I just couldn't get a sense of who this event was made for. Excited children and their begrudging parents? It definitely wasn't a press event because cameras were banned, so presumably this was supposed to encourage word of mouth and create a positive association with the product.
And that worked. To a point. This was a pretty cool and exclusive thing to see. The lottery system also helped to build excitement and make it feel like a special occasion. Around 800 people had tickets to the Saturday, and while we had to wait now and then, we still had time to spare. You weren't expected to do everything, and most people wouldn't want that. There was a decent assortment of games, including the 18+ zone, which felt very illicit. And then I just spent 20 minutes skipping Yakuza 0 cutscenes, beat up like 2 guys, and tried to complete Baka Mitai before the demo timed out. Also, my dear father, who very kindly took us to this event, demands I complain about the merch situation. Apparently, the New York experience got a cool looking backpack. We got a tote with a metal water bottle, pen, post-it notes, and the world's smallest poster. Basically the usual array of shit you can get your logo on for a UK event. Apparently these rucksacks are super common at events in New York. I appreciate the cultural difference of suitable bags to slap your branding on. But honestly, we both use totes fairly frequently for shopping, and this is a damn fine tote. Compared to some others we've gotten as freebies, it has good quality fabric and is a decent size, unlike this Hyper Japan one we got, which seems to be crumpling under atmospheric pressure. The poster is hilarious though. It looks like it was supposed to be on the walls advertising the event, not given to a human person.
I assume this event was run by an external company, because the Switch 2 event ran counter to a lot of the appeal of Nintendo. The Direct made us feel like Nintendo prioritizes playing games the way you like to play them. No need to chase trends, just have fun. But the experience felt like we were being told there was a correct way to play each game and to never deviate. Nintendo, TM, should be presented in only the best quality lighting and must never look bad. Maybe it's the difference between the developers and the legal team. Overall, we still think Nintendo is a breath of fresh air in the gaming industry. Could they improve in places? Yes, undoubtedly. But equally, at least they're trying to do something different. Also, I will absolutely be buying that GameCube controller for the Switch 2. I can't wait. Thank you very much for watching, we hope you enjoyed, and feel free to check out our Patreon. For just £1 you can get early access and work in progress videos. If you want to keep up with what we've been watching, we have a monthly blog post on our Patreon that you can read for free on our Patreon. Feel free to follow us on Tumblr for gay omniscient readers viewpoint posts, Blue Sky for random thoughts, TikTok for like videos sometimes, and our second channel for lower effort videos. We've got stuff going on everywhere. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next video. Thank you very much for watching. Bye!